Hello, in this fourth video, I'm going to start melding 2D and 3D together. In the previous three videos, we talked about navigation, manipulation, material assignment, rendering, and now I'm going to show you how to start importing your 2D assets where you can start manipulating and creating really interesting hybrid scenes or cool art. First off, you want to enable images as planes, and that's going to be the most used tool, or easier tool. I mean, you can do it eventually through the shader nodes, but for now, to enable image as planes, navigate towards the Edit, Preferences, and into your add-ons. Let's look at image as planes, and I already have it enabled, but you'll check this or tick mark it, and then it should be when you go Shift A, image as planes. Now what this does is, if we go to plane here, it's going to import your 2D image with the correct shader output, and it's going to map it onto this object here into a plane. So let's get started. Image as plane. Let us find mesh image as image as plane. It's going to pop this up, and you're going to navigate towards wherever your image is. I've created one previously, so let's navigate towards that. So it'll be desktop, and it'll be tutorial, and here, as you can see that it's on a gray background, it has transparency enabled. So when I click on this, now you can import a number of images inside, and it's going to create separate planes. I come from modding and doing a little bit of game dev, nothing professionally, but I've learned to pack things into a texture image like this. This is not utilizing the space, if you're familiar with that, but as a 2D artist, it's just easier for me to use a larger image like this. It saves on resources from loading things in. Now, there's a variety of options on the side here, which you can position positive X, Y, Z, how far they're apart. This is great if you're importing a number of images in, like a layout, for example. The kind of how large these things are and where the alignment is. And the important thing here is this stuff here, material settings. Now, if you want it principled, which means it takes in shader information, this is what you want to select. If you choose emit, it will take in no colored information. We can later change it on to use emit, but for now we'll stick with principled. It's going to use the alpha. We can choose a variety of things here. And auto refresh means if we are importing an image sequence, it'll just automatically refresh it. Currently we still have the single thing here, so all these default settings are fine. Import images as plane, and voila, it's right here. Now we can't see it because currently we're under viewport shading, but if we move to the view, this setting here, you can see it's now enabled right here. So we're just going to rotate this up to X90, move this up here, and you can see here we have all these lovely images. Now if I click the viewport shading, there's no light source information, and from a previous tutorial about adding lights, let's add a single light image, and you can see it's taking in or manipulating the light source. But it's, remember what we're talking about with the roughness and stuff? So if we go here, we can increase the roughness, lower it if we want to make it super shiny. It just really depends what we're after. We can lower the specularity like this. So now this almost acts like a soft gradient tool going around. We can add an image plane, add a regular plane, and scale this up a bit. But now something's kind of weird. You can see that it's kind of, let me just lower the, not lower, I take off soft shading. It's using the image plane and casting the shadows. What if we actually want the shape that is within these image planes to cast as a shadow? This is something you have to change here in the material properties. If we scroll down, you can see shadow mode is opaque. If we do this alpha clip, it should work. There we go. I had to update a bit. And now you can see it's casting even the little holes here. Alright, well, we're on our way. So I'm going to show you how to use the knife tool. So if we click on the image here, go into edit mode, you can see it's on the map tool here. So if we hit K, click here, we can kind of like lasso the tool out. Space bar, click here, K, and let's manipulate this out. Do the final one here, and actually one more. It'd be kind of messy, it's fine. Now, if we select the images like this, deselect everything. Oh, this thing is going to connect. So what we're going to do is select one, hit P selection, selection, and P selection. Now we don't need this extra bit here, so we can delete this. And now each of them are on its separate plane. We can move this around and start manipulating it this way. To keep things consistent, you can see it's inherited the name of what the main image was. So we're just gonna change the names here to make it easier. Cat, grass, whoosh, and tower. Alright, and to make it even more cleaner, new collection, images. Okay, and there we go. So now you can just start manipulating it and having fun. With our camera, let's add a camera, Shift A, camera, and from the previous tutorial, Control Alt 0, and there we go. Now we can start creating like an object in here. Maybe you have like this block on the side like this. Let's put it right here. Here's a fun thing I like to do is, one thing, if you look at this, you see these green dots everywhere, and that's because that's the origin point. So if I rotate this, it's rotating from this point. Now this can be a little confusing, so there are two ways we can do this. If we just want to center everything in the middle, we can select everything, Control, this is going to be a massive one. Actually, I have to turn on screencast keys so you can see this. Alright, so it's Control Shift Alt C to set origin, and origin to geometry. And now the dots of the origin points have put itself here. But you can see it's rotating this way. What happens if we want the origin point down here, which kind of makes sense in a way? Well, you can click here with the 3D cursor and origin to 3D cursor, and now it's going to spin that way. You can do it for each of these too if you want as well. Let's do that here, origin to 3D cursor, origin to 3D cursor, and origin to 3D cursor. Let's move our cat friend here. Now the reason why I was going to say something cool is, if rather than me like trying to move it over here and get it to the right spot, I can click the 3D cursor because I know it'll snap onto the surface, Shift S, and snap selection to cursor. So pop it right here, and now I can just use the Z axis and a rotation tool to rotate it around. I can see it's slightly flying, so I can move it down like that. Excellent. Move this slightly down. We can scale this up a bit larger. Move this back here. Rotate it. And move this bush closer here. And move this like this. I'm going to do a little bit of an extra step here, which is kind of cool. What might be helpful is we're going to play a little bit with the particle system. There's a couple ways to go about this. Let's say if I want this plane to be filled with this grass here, what I can end up doing is creating a particle hair and changing the hair for this object. So what we can end up doing is clicking here, but first off, I kind of want to make this the same color as the grass here. So I'm going to just click on this and let's just choose that. And now if I click back onto the plane, sorry, and let's add in particle properties. We'll click this, add a new one. We can change this to grass. I'm gonna change this to hair. And now you can see all these weird hair strands standing up. Wild. Well, what we can end up doing is going into the viewport display. Display is rendered. Yes, color material. Actually, no, that's the wrong one. We want to go into render, and it's rendering paths, but we want to render it as an object. What's the object? Well, here it is. To instance the object, we'll click and select our grass. Now, all our little grass blades are here. And now it's this really small scale, so we can increase the scale up like this. And first off, wow, that's rad. That's pretty cool. I'm always amazed with this. Sure, it looks kind of weird with it all facing the same way. That's where we'll add in different parameters, but this is pretty cool. One thing to note too is in game dev we can the way they create like a two-sided plane is or like, sorry, what I'm trying to say is like the way they usually create plane or sprite plants is they'll have another plane kind of like on a different axis. So if we select this, duplicate this, and rotate this slightly, there'll be a bit more of a three-dimensionality to it, like this. And so this was, I'm just going to rotate this, bring this up here. So this is now our grass. We've just like entered into the mode here, rotated it slightly. And now it'll face like, it's kind of like two directions. I'm just going to bring this grass back down here. But the thing is, our grass is still facing one direction. Or it's the rotation's kind of unnatural. It's almost like it's being programmed to be this way. So if we go here and we'll have to open up the advance, there's a rotation. Take this, and now we can, well, where is it? Normal, I think. Yes, we can use the normal here, but I think, is it global Z? There is a way to, oh, here we go, randomized phase, there we go. Sometimes like each instance when you're using this material editor, sorry, the particle settings, there's different parameters you can play around with. So in my head I'm checking which one it is, and each of them offer a kind of different look. So for this instance I was like, oh, do I need to randomize the velocity? But that takes into account something else. We need to worry about just the randomized phase here. As you can see, it's just randomizing each direction, and we can change the phase of it this way. And now that's looking a bit more natural. We can also play with the scale randomization here to make it a little more natural as well. Just again, as a beginner primer, I don't want to bog you down with too many things here. And now this is the number of instances it's created. So there's 1,000 here. We can lower it this way, where we can have less, like 10. We can increase it. Be careful with this number setting. If you have high poly objects and you're doing this, it could bog down your system a little bit. But since this is technically two planes or an n-gon, it shouldn't be too problematic on the system. So now we have a populated grass thing. That's great. Let's do the same with the bush here. So let's go back here. Oh, you'll always select, when you select the plane, it looks like it's selecting all the objects, but it's just like the particle emitter here. It always freaks me out because like, oh, if I select all these objects. So we're going to create a new particle system here, and let's call this bush. Right off the bat, it'll always like spawn these like little spheres. This is for a different kind of setting. It'll emit these things in space, so you can create like dust motes or embers. But we're interested in hair, so we'll click hair. I'm just going to do the same thing as we did before, where we're going to find the viewport display. No, I did the same thing again. The object, select the bush, and now it's creating the bushes here. And as before, let's click on the bush here, and let's duplicate this with Shift D and rotate it slightly this way. We can also scale it down, give it a bit more of a visual interest. Like that. You can see it's kind of acting a little bit weird, and that's because of the blending mode the alpha blending mode. So in this case, we might have to use an alpha clip, which is right here, alpha blend. If we do alpha clip, now you can see it works to the way we think it should work, where it's like intersecting two planes rather than blending the alphas together. All right. So let's go back here and let's go into our whoosh settings here, and let's play around with the scale, and let's make the scale like this, change it like this. We don't want 1,000, let's say 250. Let us take off the show overlay so we can actually see what's happening with the bush, and let us what should we do? Oh yes, advance rotation, and then randomize rotation like this. I kind of want to make the bushes a bit bigger like that. Let's change the seed. The seed will basically means that it's going to keep all the settings, but it's going to scatter them differently. So we can always do that in case there's something you don't like. So let's still decrease this a bit, and maybe use the seed here. There we go. And then look at that. We've created a wonderful scene with our 2D assets. We've added a particle emitter to generate our own grass. We have our cat friend here, a 2D object, and our giant scale here. Let's turn on this. Let's go back to our camera view, and you can see it's intersecting in the ground. So let's rotate back, find something interesting to look at. This looks great. So let's go Control, Alt, Numpad 0. Whoa, what? Oh, okay. So the funny thing is, it's taken into account that this object is our active viewport. We can change that by clicking this, Control 0, Control Numpad 0, and now rotating the view. It happens sometimes if you have an object and you go into it, it thinks it's a camera, or it thinks it's the active object to view from. So we're from here, Control Alt 0, there we go. And now we have the cat here. Now we can, it looks like it's taking a look at the bush here. Let's do like this. Yes. Excellent. I'm going to show you some other cool settings now with the camera. So once we have constructed this view, we could go into the camera settings. So we select the camera, enable depth of field, get that kind of predator prowler look. And we want to, let's say, what happens if we want to focus in on the cat? Well, we could go here, focus on object, and we can click on the cat. It'll focus in on the cat. But there's one way I like doing, which is focusing on an empty object. So if you go Shift A, empty, and you can choose anything that makes sense to you. I always default to the plane axis. And now, let's move this way up here. And if we do the depth of field on the empty, well, it'll take into account. Whoa, this is kind of finicky. Hey, my friend. There we go. It will take into account the distance of this. So now we can like manipulate it this way, kind of get a rack focus in. The scale doesn't really do anything here, but this is what I like to use for that. Default 2.8. If we zoom in, try and lower this slightly. Get the cat right there. Go back here. Let's increase this like that. Okay. Now the reason why it's stuttering is because it's zoomed in and there's a lot of blur happening here, so it's calculating all of this. I can actually move back a bit further so it's not intersecting some of these planes here. So let's say if I want it back here, it won't be as laggy. Control Alt Pen 0, and then let's aim here. So you can see from far away it's fine, but as soon as I get close, it's chugging. That's because it's calculating this distance here. So let us, if I do increase it like this, it's not as chuggy, but you can see. So this is something to keep in mind. If you're rendering something out and you can see like it's starting to chug a little bit, That's because it's calculating the blurs on that side. So let's aim this way. Let's do 1 meter. And this is a way to kind of alleviate it, the clipping, so it doesn't chug like that, as you can see. As soon as it's out of frame, or, I mean, this one's a little too large, so let's do that. Okay. Oh, GZ. Oh, nope. Okay, I'm just gonna rotate this, not rotate it, I'll just bring this down slightly. That looks really cute. And let's bring the f-stop like that. And now, as before, we can start lighting this in different ways. One cool thing about having the particles here, like, look at this. Okay, oh, if I can, you can see how it's casting all the lights here. But it's also, if we go back here, it's casting these beautiful light sources this way. So let's just start like playing around with this. I'm gonna darken the background like that. Ooh, mysterious. Add in a light source back here. Maybe like that. That's kind of cool, the shadow casting there. And maybe something like this. And maybe lower this like that. I'm just going to play around with this. Too much I might stop soon here. But anyway, this is how I kind of work, just like adding lights and trying to figure out what areas I want to kind of cast and draw attention to. Excuse me. And then maybe let's add a sunlight. And lower this just slightly. That way. And there we go. Hopefully now, with this 4th video, you know how to add in basic mesh objects, rotate, manipulate, scale them, add materials to them, render them out. And this final step here is now you can add in your own 2D assets, populate a scene, and create really cool interactive scenes like this. I feel like they're like digitized or digital dioramas. It's something I wanted to do more of. But yeah, look at this. This is pretty cool. I have a video on adding volumetrics, and so if we add in volumetrics on this scene, I think it'll really seal the deal. But right off the bat, I think this is super useful to have in the very beginning if you're trying to like create your drawing and you just need to like have something quick down. You can create this, render it out as a transparency, pop it in Photoshop, and just start like blending certain areas, manipulating them. Yeah, thank you.